Hello, hello, hello. My name is Scott Stanfield. This is It's My Friday. I am a modern longevitarian, and today's guest is one of my very, very, very favorite of all the people I've had on all my podcasts, all my stuff. And for other people who've been a guest, I'm sorry, but Woods, welcome to the Modern Longevitarian.
Oh, thank you for having me. And I love the intro music. I was back here just kind of doing my own little thing. So
yeah, I can see you in this little window. Both of you and I were both kind of just kind of getting their thing on. I send out some comments to for people to give us a thumbs up, share it, or to let us check in with us and things like that. So I'm kind of looking down while that's going on, but I'm so excited to have you on the show because we actually did a podcast, one of my longest podcasts of all time, hour and a half. Actually, I think that was with the intro, and we actually recorded 82 minutes, you and me, right? Yeah. So here we are live, and I'm excited about this, and I've been doing this. I've kind of lost track. I think I'm close to 7 or 8 weeks of doing live shows, minus the holidays. 5 days a week. And
wow, 5 days a week? I didn't know that. Ow.
Yeah, 5 days a week, and so. Just recently became part of the Spirituality Gone Wild network. So I want to welcome everybody who's watching on Spirituality Gone Wild and all their channels. We're also on LinkedIn, which is something you have to apply to get. Not everybody can just go live like on Instagram or Facebook. So I'm excited about that and for all the people. And I sent several people messages that you and I have mutual connections saying, hey, we're going to be on the show. So hopefully we got some of those people tuning in on LinkedIn. But yes, 5 days a week. Normally, I do 3 interviews a week. So I'm doing 3 podcasts a week live, right? Plus 2 solo episodes. This week, though, I did have Damon Burton on yesterday. So I have 4 interviews this week. You're number 2. Tomorrow's my only solo episode. I'm going to talk about this little jaw exercise thing, which is a little exerciser for your jaw where you do that. It's like my biohack testing day. I talk about those type of things. And then, so I had another show, Andrea Lynn's on Thursday, and then Friday is the biohacking bombshell, Alyssa Lascala from Instagram. She's an integrative health coach. So I'm excited about this week. It's going to be a great show. So anyway, I talk about that all the time, right? So let's talk about you. How'd you get started in? Because you're the, founder and co-founder and CEO of Cancer University. Right. You also founded Blue Faery, which is your in honor of your sister liver cancer foundation, which is super cool spelling and the reason why it's called Blue Faery. But I think it kind of all started with the memoir, the medical memoir you wrote, right, about your sister. So if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, everything goes back to my sister. So when I was 22, I was living in LA. I had graduated from USC, go Trojans, and I ended up getting custody of my then 8-year-old sister, Adrienne. I was her legal guardian. I was her only parent. I raised her all through my 20s until a month after her 15th birthday when she was diagnosed with stage 4 liver cancer. And literally the day before she was fine, and then the next day she was in pain, and an ER doctor tells us after a CAT scan that she has tumors in her liver and lungs. And her cancer journey was 147 days, and it was the most difficult time in my life. I lost my child, I lost my sister, and she died a few months after my 29th birthday. So by the time I was 30, it just changed the whole course of my life and what was really important to me. So I did start my nonprofit. Gosh, it'll be 18 years in a couple of weeks here. And yeah, that nonprofit is Blue Faery, F-A-E-R-Y, the Adrienne Wilson Liver Cancer Association. And it's specifically dedicated to primary liver cancer or hepatocellular carcinoma, the cancer that killed my sister. And then Cancer University is a for-profit social benefit health tech startup that's only 2 years old, and I co-founded that. And then my medical memoir, which you talked about, which is kind of behind me. If you really look, you can see it in the background.
I can see it, but I know what the cover looks like, right? I know it has a picture of Adrienne on it, right?
It's got Adrienne on the cover, yeah. So my medical memoir is Better Off Bald, A Life in 147 Days. And it is that story of raising my sister and losing her. And it's told like a journal. So I wrote it like a journal, so days or chapters. And I did that because I kept a medical diary while Adrienne was sick, but also she kept a journal before she was sick and continued it even while she was sick. And so you really get her point of view as the patient and my point of view as the caregiver. And I'm really proud to say, I think even since we last spoke, the book has won several awards now. And yeah, I'm very proud of it.
Yeah. And I posted, and I didn't know that, but when I was, perusing your LinkedIn profile yesterday, making this broadcast and putting, what am I going to put in there? I saw those awards and actually included them in the show notes. So like people can see the awards that have been won. And so they're all there, which is amazing. And I'm getting chills right now. Right. I'm, one of the things that is really, I think was really cool that we talked about before is that when you went back and looked at both of your journals, is that there was a point that you thought she was getting better and she knew she wasn't.
Yeah.
And so, and that's in the book. And that's, I don't know. I don't know if we really want to go down that road again, but that's something that I think that most people don't realize, the difference between the optimism of the caregiver and then the patient really knowing intuitively where they are and what's really happening. Right.
Yeah.
And so, but all of that really spawned this, obviously Blue Faery, but then Cancer University. And I'm actually writing a new webpage, and I was like, meet Scott, the modern longevitarian. And I wanted, there's this picture of me, and I'm like pointing up, and up there it says something along the lines about breaking generational health span cycles. Right.
Yeah, I saw that. It was very interesting.
Yeah. And I was like, wait a minute, my paternal grandfather passed away of bone cancer at age 62. My grandmother, his wife, she had type 2 diabetes, right? She passed away. She was, I don't remember the exact age right now. We figured it up yesterday, but it's like 64, I think 64. Both my parents had cancer at age 55, right? My dad, prostate cancer. My mom, uterine cancer. Both of them had chemo and surgery, prostate and hysterectomy. Right. My mom's mom, when you go on maternal side, she had lupus for like 13 years and passed away. She was 69 years old when she passed away. And so I started putting all these pieces together, and I'm like, and I happened to be interviewing you today, right? And with the Cancer University, and I've seen their reaction to when cancer is diagnosed, is just do what the doctor says.
Yeah.
Right. And you have such a unique perspective on that's what I really want, because most people don't realize. And we even had a really close friend, a lifelong friend of my wife's, get cancer just recently. And we talked about this in the podcast. And the same thing, even my parents are like, the doctor said I can eat whatever I want. And I'm like, oh, you're killing me. You're still eating grits and bacon and eggs and and biscuits and sodas and those type of things. And I'm just like going, there's no care for toxic load, detoxing, supporting the liver, right? Those type of things, right? There's for detoxing the body and it's really just a wild thing. I could talk for hours, but anyway, so tell us about Cancer University, because I really love that. And I want to get the word out about what that is and help people make better decisions if cancer is, because I always tag your things. It's like what to do when cancer hits the fan. Right.
Right.
And so this is the whole point of having you here, is for this.
You're so sweet. I want to say hi to Gina, because she said hello in the comments. So hello, Gina. Nice to meet you.
Gina,
I mean,
by the way, Gina, she was on the show. She actually lives in Mexico City. We went to high school together. She's a restaurateur, sommelier, and we talked about wines, on that. But anyway, Gina's really good friend.
Oh, cool. I love wine too, Gina. Although I wouldn't want to own a restaurant right now, given everything, but we can talk about that too. Well, in addition to my sister, I mean, that was by far the greatest loss and the most sudden, and she was the youngest. But I think I mentioned on your podcast, I've had 5 other family members die from 5 different kinds of cancer. Liver was my sister, but lung, my uncle and grandfather, head and neck, another grandfather, breast, my maternal aunt, and bone, another uncle. So, and just all sides of the family. And it's really frustrating, because I would say in half of those cancers, if different actions have been taken much earlier, the cancer could have been caught earlier, or perhaps a clinical trial could have saved that person's life, including my sister. And so it's beyond frustrating. So yes, if anybody's watching or listening, and you are a newly diagnosed cancer patient or the caregiver of a newly diagnosed cancer patient, I'm just going to throw out my email. It's Andrea, ANDREA, gosh, I had to think about that, at cancer.university. And I will send you a membership code, so you can just get a free lifetime membership to CancerU. But CancerU is an online membership platform. It is for both patients and caregivers to really educate, empower, and engage you to become an advocate for your cancer care, to improve outcomes for the patient, and also for the caregivers to get support, because I found that very lacking during my experience with my sister. And we have courses for education, we have a community for engagement, and we have coaching for empowerment. And we really feel like you need all three of those things to truly make a difference.
Right. And that really spawned from when your sister got cancer. You were just handed scientific documents, right, that you didn't really understand. So if you want to talk about the process of how you went from, like, I've got to like have a dictionary beside me to figure this out, to putting what is in Cancer University, like in layman's terms.
Yeah, it started with my nonprofit. So my nonprofit really spawned from that experience with my sister. And then with my nonprofit, what I was finding was that educational materials were not enough, even written in layman's terms. I was finding that about 95% of the time, even when patients and caregivers had the information, they were downloading the brochure, or I mailed it to them, or they had everything, they didn't know what to do with it. And I liken it to that, I guess it's a proverb, where you give a man a fish or you teach a man how to fish. And I have spent years coaching patients and caregivers pro bono. And I was like, what is this? Like, why is it most people aren't natural advocates? And it bothered me so much that I decided to spend a little time studying it. And what I found was those people who are natural advocates, they had two things in common, all of them, regardless of the cancer, regardless of age, regardless of whether they were the patient, the caregiver, regardless. One, they sort of had a natural curiosity, whether they were extroverted or introverted, but they just had a natural curiosity and they wanted to learn. And the other thing they all had in common was they had some kind of early exposure to the healthcare system, whether one of their parents was a doctor, or in my case, my mother was a nurse, or one person, her sister was actually very sick when they were kids. And so she was always going with her sister to the doctor. So those people who had those two things in common tended to be more natural advocates. But otherwise, most people don't know how to do it. It is a learned skill. And CancerU really came out of, well, how can we, give people information, but really teach them how to use it? And that's why with CancerU, we do have courses, but it goes way beyond that. It has the coaching and the community aspect to it as well.
That's amazing, because like I said, the one thing that I've seen, the common piece of it, and you've probably seen this too, because it's not, I just listed off my family. I'm not listing like my dad's three best friends, right?
Right.
Two of those prostate cancer and one colon cancer. And then it's just like, and we've talked about this, the Southern version of the standard American diet. So the SFAD, right? Right.
Lard and everything, butter and everything. Oh my God.
Not to mention, and I've told this story just recently. I remembered this, that my mom was a lunch lady at our elementary school. It's Springdale Elementary School in South Carolina. And so I wasn't allowed to take my lunch. I had to support the cafeteria throughout my whole school career until I graduated. Wild. It is wild, right? When you think about that, right?
Yeah.
And so the interesting thing about that was there's two things. One, now working in the restaurant world, I don't take food anywhere. I just there's going to be food where I go, right? I'm just going to eat wherever I am, right? So that's really kind of an interesting programming that I have over these years. And the other piece of that was in high school, they had a hamburger French fry line every day. And I ate hamburgers and French fries every day in high school, except when they had pizza in the other line.
Oh, God.
What is that? Once or twice a month that I was getting one of those rectangle pizzas. But, you know, so you think about it, 170, 168 days a year, I was eating a hamburger with French fries for lunch.
Wow. That's terrible.
Right. And I interviewed Russ Yeager, he works with Grant Cardone on the live show, and actually on the podcast as well. And he won an international physique transformation contest, has helped thousands of people. He quit being a CPA and he's like 43, got visible abs, got biceps the size of my head. I mean, just like, and he grew up in Alabama, ironically. Right. And he did the opposite of me. He had pizza every day. Right. Cause he played on the basketball team. He's like 6'6", right. Played on the basketball team. He had pizza every day, except when they had hamburgers in the other line. So he did the opposite of me. But I mean, you think about the impact of that. Hey, you're going to go to school. Here's your money for buy your tickets, right? And this teenager gets to choose whatever they want. And the responsibility lies then on the people who determine the menus, right?
Yeah.
To serve healthy foods to our kids. But they never would think that a kid would go eat a burger every day, except when you have pizza. And I wasn't the only one, right? I mean, it was like, I mean, think about the impact, generational impact of that. It's okay. It's been deemed okay by the powers that be to have a burger every day, right? It's crazy.
Yeah. So I have something sort of similar, but just it goes along with sort of a misconception. I went to a performing arts high school here in Birmingham, very much like Fame, 3 ballet classes a day. We actually had a salad bar. And so we had healthy options. But I was told that anything with fat was bad for you, anything with fat. Everything had to be non-fat. But I wasn't taught anything about sugar. So I drank Diet Coke, all the time as a teenager, always Diet Coke. I would eat candy as long as it didn't have fat. I would eat candy. So I ate like red vines and gummy bears and, but I stayed away from things like peanut butter, which I love. And I stayed away from nuts, which I love. And so I stayed away from eggs. So things that were sort of healthier fats, I stayed away from. And I mean, that continued through my 20s really until, over a period of time, things happened with my health. And I started realizing, well, what if I switch things up? And also margarine, margarine's better for you than real butter. Margarine's absolutely better, even though it's all processed, right? And then I started making these changes, and I really didn't happen until I learned a lot with my sister and what was good for her during her cancer journey. And I started making changes sort of one at a time. I weaned myself off Diet Coke over a long period of time. And then I was like, what if I just look at sugar content instead and forget about fat and just look at how much sugar is in what I'm eating. And when I started paying attention to that, I was like, oh my gosh, the amount of sugar I was consuming every day and things that had 0 fat. And when I started making that change, it was remarkable the weight that I lost and just how my body changed. And it wasn't 40, 50 pounds because I wasn't that overweight, the way my body changed. And I weigh less now than I did in high school. And I think in a lot of respects, I look better now than I did in high school, just because of the way I eat now is so much healthier. So now what's more important to me is how much sugar is in something. And the fewer the ingredients, the better. And if I can't pronounce the ingredients, I probably shouldn't be eating it.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you just nailed it. I mean, I really, the first thing is that, first off is if you look back, it's like all this cancer, I saw these commonalities. And the first thing that I knew is diet was the thing that was the common denominator between all my family and family friends that were getting cancer. I watched them still eat the same pulled pork barbecue, the same French fries, the same fried chicken, the same overcooked green beans with fat back in them, and and broccoli casserole and green bean casserole and potato salad, and with Duke's
We love our
mayonnaise.
casseroles,
Yeah.
don't we, in the South? We really
Right.
do.
Yeah, we do. Right. But I've even started making like, I'll take cauliflower rice and make like this really like with raw cheese and make like this cauliflower cheesy casserole, just a little throwback and from time to time. But my point is that the food is, or I call it fuel, is so it's not as important as we thought. We don't need 3 square meals a day, but also what we've been told what we need in terms of a macronutrient mix is opposite of what we need. Now, I fly the keto flag. I'm not telling other people they need to be in ketosis. I really think that everybody needs to be metabolically flexible, meaning that you need to have your body at some point, even in a week's time, go into ketosis, and that could be through fasting. You could eat a high carb diet and fast long enough and get into ketosis, right? You don't have to eat a low carb diet to get your body into ketosis. So metabolic flexibility is important. And you also, the thing is that a good reference point is to throttle in your carbs, which like you did. Gosh, I used to drink 6 Mountain Dews a day before I started drinking coffee. Gosh. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it was because I didn't know that I was drinking caffeine from that, but the sugar and all those things.
Sugar.
My breakfast was a stop at the convenience store to get a honey bun. Remember those honey buns in the packages, right? In the South, right? A honey bun and of all things, an orange Gatorade. I'm like, well, orange juice is good for you. Maybe this orange Gatorade's good for me. So I was having a honey bun and an orange Gatorade for breakfast, like before.
And you had 40 grams of sugar right there. Easy.
Boom. Yeah. Just straight out the gate. Right. And that was crashing. Then you need a Mountain Dew to pick you back up. Right. Because it's got all the caffeine in it. Right. You just like this cycle, this caffeine sugar complex. You just like keep going around this circle. Right. But my point being is that, like, say, for instance, I weigh 170 pounds. A good reference for me would be about 170 grams of carbs a day. Now, if I'm going to be in ketosis, I'm going to be somewhere south of 50 net carbs a day, which is going to be probably about, with fiber, probably, 70 to 80 net carbs, right? If I'm going to maintain my being in ketosis. And so the thing is that I love what you did is that you started paying attention to the sugar piece of it. And what happens is that people don't realize there's 2 forms of energy, right? There's carbohydrates or fats. And when you're in ketosis, your body doesn't care if it's going to burn the fat, and it primarily will burn the fat that you eat first or the fat from your body. People think that a ketogenic diet is all bacon and avocados and eggs and ribeye steaks and just, tubs of lard or butter that you're eating, or bulletproof coffees. You can be in ketosis and not eat anything at all, or you can be in ketosis and eat, low fat too, and then force your body to burn it off. You burn it off your body. Right. And so it's really an interesting piece of the puzzle when it comes to that whole dynamic. And so I guess where you were at, and you can answer this question, is that you started throttling your carbs because Adrienne's diet, they said, stop eating sugar because of cancer. Is that how it all started?
Oh, no, not at all. No. I just became aware, with her cancer journey, it really made us very conscious of what she could eat and not eat, because so many foods made her nauseous, and trying to get it, so many cancer patients actually die from the treatment, right? Because they become so underweight. And so I just became, I'm not a cook. I don't like to cook. I'm not a good cook. I'm not a foodie. And so for me, food is something that, I have to eat for energy, but I don't really pay much attention to it. But with her, I had to pay more attention, and I had to get healthy calories into her, and I had to find foods that made her feel good. And so I had to just get on top of it. And I just learned a lot more about nutrition and herbs and supplements. And I think that carried over even after she passed away. And I just started paying more attention. And I kind of got to a point where I was like, well, what if I just don't drink Diet Coke all the time, And again, I didn't just stop one day, because I don't think that works very well. I gradually weaned myself off Diet Coke over a very long period of time, and kind of, again, sort of one by one, like what if I just don't eat as much sugar? Or what if I just start paying attention to the sugar? Because I don't think something absolute you can stick to. And I think that's why it worked for me, is because I did it over a long period of time, and I didn't get mad at myself if I cheated. It's not like I don't have a piece of chocolate occasionally. I do. I love chocolate. But now when I go to shop and look for things, like, let's just say spaghetti sauce, I don't care about fat at all. When I look at spaghetti sauce, all I care about is the amount of sugar. And I will always buy something with less sugar more than anything else. And it's pretty much same for everything. I really just pay attention to the sugar content, because when I made that shift, it changed how my body looked. It changed how my body carried weight. I think back now, even when I look at pictures, especially when I drank Diet Coke, of how bloated I was all the time. And I didn't realize it. Like, I had no idea. I mean, I grew up on diet drinks. That's what my mother drank. That's what I drank. Right. That's what was expected if you were a ballet dancer, which I was in that fine arts high school. I mean, we had a soda machine in the dance studio, and it only had diet drinks. So you had very limited options.
Right. So if you wanted the soda, you have a choice between diet and diet, right?
Yeah. So it just, my sister's journey helped me pay more attention, and I'm still not a cook. I still don't enjoy the fuss, of eating. It's not that I don't enjoy a good meal. I do, but I just don't like to plan it. But to your point, 3 square meals a day. Yeah. Well, no, last night I wasn't that hungry for dinner. And so I just had like a little snack with a few pieces of cheese and cashews, and it's okay if I don't want to eat a big meal. That's fine.
Yeah, it's really an interesting piece of the whole puzzle, right? I do that sometimes too, right? Where, like I may work out a little bit harder, around 2 o'clock, and then I'll eat big, because there's this program in me. It's like I work out, I need to get some, some protein in, and it may be a smoothie with hemp protein or something like that. And then I get time to where everybody's ready to eat dinner, and you're right, it may be like some cheese, some olives, some nuts, it may be just something like that, or a salad, right? So
right.
It changes, right? Where we were taught breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
I know. I know.
Yeah. And I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just not saying that everybody's breakfast has to be before you rush out to go to school or work, right?
Yeah.
You can give your system a break, right? I'm literally not hungry in the morning. Never have been as long as I can remember. I mean, I don't remember like being a small kid, but we were told breakfast is the most important meal of the day. You got to eat breakfast. You got to eat breakfast. You got to eat breakfast. And I started, fell in love with, like scrambled egg sandwiches and fried egg sandwiches with ham on them and things like that. Yeah.
Yes, love fried eggs.
Toasted, all that stuff, right? I fell in love with all that stuff, and I still eat them from time to time. But what happened was when I discovered intermittent fasting, I think February is going to be 9 years that I've been intermittent fasting, right? So I was an very early adopter in this whole fasting piece of the puzzle. And it basically gave me permission to listen to my body and eat when I'm hungry.
Yeah.
And, without fail, unless, I get hungry somewhere between, it depends on what I ate the night before, when I stopped fasting the day, or stopped eating the night before. It depends on, also, I noticed like how much sleep I get is super important, because yesterday, I went to bed at like super late, like 2:45 in the morning on Sunday night.
Wow. Right? That is late.
Yeah. I'm a night owl, so I have to guard against that, but I still had to get up to do the live show. Right. So then yesterday I started getting hungry earlier. Right. And my cravings were kind of out of control. Right. So here's someone who wrote a book on sleep, talks about intermittent fasting. It's been keto. I kept 40 pounds off for the last, I'm going on 9 years now. Right. And lost it at least twice, if not more. Right. And here I am, but I'm aware. I'm like, okay, make good decisions
right
with these cravings. Okay. And do that. And then make sure that I get a solid night's sleep. And I woke up this morning smiling, happy, ready to go. I actually did 100 kettlebell swings with my 60-pound, kettlebell this morning. Right. I've finished a cup of coffee. My wife and I had a little bit of prayer before we started the show, had a cold shower, did 17 minutes worth of meditating. I've done all that this morning before you and I are here. But yesterday afternoon was kind of a struggle. So without fail, somewhere around 2 o'clock, I'm going to get hungry. Right. Just know. But there's like my friend of mine, Bob Hosell. He's 78 years old. He does the same thing. Intermittent fasting, ketogenic diet. He's keeping the weight off. He actually used to count calories when you had to look in a book and write it in a journal, right? Before there was an app, right? Yeah. I mean, he's been doing this since he was 40, the same thing, right? Counting calories, doing this, but there was no spreadsheets. There was no websites. There was no internet. There was no apps on a smartphone, none of that stuff. And it's, this is a great guy. One of my old nicknames is Standstill because I used to move slow. My last name's Stanfield, so Standstill.
I love what this guy's saying. You've always been a health nut in one form or another.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you why, right? Because right as I was transitioning from racing go-karts, I don't know if we talked about this or not, but I used to race go-karts.
I think I would remember that.
Yeah. And so I was sponsored by the Camp family, and AJ's dad used to build my engines, and and AJ's uncle, Jack, was the main sponsor on the plumbing company. And we won a bunch of races. That was the last 18 months of my racing career was driving for the Camp family. And I had started going to college at this point, and my mom was actually in the macrobiotic diet and then teaching aerobics and things like that, in addition to being the lunch lady at the elementary school. So she was kind of into that stuff a little bit. And then I started bringing to the racetrack. You gotta think there's a bunch of, like good old boys at the racetrack, right? And here I am bringing a blender, frozen blueberries, apple juice, bananas, and spirulina, and making smoothies between races, right?
That's a little unusual. So,
so AJ always puts a comment in, like I put a picture of a smoothie in the other day, and I made this joke because of the restaurant business. Is like I asked my server, it was just a joke, because I asked my server to take my salad back and chop it up a little bit, and this is what I got back. It was a picture of a smoothie, right, with a straw.
Oh, okay, that's funny.
Yeah, but anyway, he goes, because he used to call it. I used to call it pond scum, the spirulina, pond scum, algae. Yeah. Right. He's always asking that. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So there he goes, pond scum. So AJ's tuning in. So yeah, so I was in that in college. I was also a vegetarian, but then I got in the restaurant business and started my weight with the stress and lack of sleep and over drinking alcohol. All those things, having access to all the food that I could ever want. Right. French fries, fried shrimp, cheesecake, key lime pie, drinking the sodas, all that stuff. Right. My weight was doing like this until I actually okay, how can I do this? Right. And my parents, the catalyst is when my dad got cancer. That was the big, how can I really change this? Right. Yeah. And luckily my wife is super amazing, was pescatarian for a long time, still is, and does Mediterranean style diet. And we don't eat the same, right? And that's another thing, is that somebody who works for them, the sleep patterns may be different. She's more of an early bird. I'm more of a night owl, right? So we don't sleep at the same times. And we just embrace that what works for her, what works for me may be different, right? When it comes even to diet, and those things. So that type of stuff. I don't even remember what we're talking about, but that's the beauty of a live show, right? We're just like jumping. We're on the trapeze without a net. We're just like going, where are we at? We're not where before we could edit this stuff out. But I don't know. It's I don't even know. Oh, we're talking about food, right?
We're talking about food. Yeah. I was a vegetarian for 20 years. And I did it kind of just to see if I could. When I moved to Los Angeles, I had my last steak on my 18th birthday. I moved to LA when I started college. And as you know, I stayed there for 2 decades. And then after 20 years, I was like, what if I try to eat meat again? And I heard that, oh my gosh, if you hadn't had meat in 20 years, your body's not gonna be able to do it. And I still ate for 4 years, I only ate fish. And then after 4 years, I started eating some chicken and turkey because I was so anemic. Right. But I did not have red meat or pork of any kind for 20 years. And then one day I was like, just going to have a piece of steak and see what happens. And I was fine. And I was really glad when I started eating red meat again, because for the first time since I was a teenager, I was no longer anemic. Like it actually, it made a big difference. Now I still don't eat a lot of red meat because I no longer have a gallbladder, and that's a whole nother story. But yeah, I mean, I'm healthier now than when I was a vegetarian. So when someone says they're vegetarian, it doesn't necessarily mean they're healthy.
No, I was a fat vegetarian, right? You gotta just know that, like, because the same thing you just talked about, there was no regulation on the carb intake.
Exactly.
Right? At all. And
at all.
It's really a weird thing. Like when you're working in the restaurant world and you have things like family meal, right? And they make meat that's involved in family meal, and they know you're a vegetarian, their only default is pasta, right? Well,
Yep.
just pasta. Oh, and I wanted to really mention too, you look at sugar content or carb content of marinara sauces. My wife picked up for like a emergency supply, just like a case from Costco, like this tomato sauce, and has sugar added in it. So people, if you're really trying to watch your sugar, read the label.
Oh yeah, I would do.
Yeah, because and there's even, like I even told her this trick. I was like, you know what I used to do? She's like, Scott, it's not a trick. You came up with. Grandma used to do this, but on salad bars, I would toss strawberries in like this sugar water, right? So when people would eat a strawberry, like, wow, this is so ripe, this is so good, right? And so there's these restaurant tricks. So I'm sorry, all the people who had strawberries down at Salt Lake Regional Medical Center, because I put sugar on them, right? But my point is that, there's all these tricks that happen inside of restaurants or in processing food that add sugar things. So we like it and we'll buy it more, and we'll like their product or their restaurant, those type of things. And so I wanted to get back and say that. But what happened is I was a fat vegetarian. You got to think 40 pounds of fat is a lot, right? I mean, it's a lot of calories that you have stored on your body. And yeah. I love the fact that how you now, you feel and you see that you are healthier than when you were doing ballet 3 times a day, 5 days a week. Right. Yeah. And all that. And you were probably moving more then, right?
Oh, much more. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So that shows how important what we eat is. And it's amazing. So you mentioned LA. I'm actually, this was not planned. My coffee this morning is in my Starbucks California mug. Right? Yeah. And my favorite band, Hootie and the Blowfish, made a song in early 2019 called Miss California. So that gets some heavy rotation because I'm back in Utah. But you went in October, you were in LA. So tell me about what was different in California when you were there.
Yeah, so every year I go back to LA for about 4 or 5 days because my sister's still buried in LA. She's buried in the Hollywood Forever Cemetery, which is a really cool, awesome cemetery if you've never been. And the first thing I did when all this pandemic happened was I called the cemetery and made sure they were open before I bought my ticket. Got my ticket, best ticket I've ever gotten on my ideal flight, and it was like $250, and then after points it was $108 round trip. I've never gotten a ticket that cheap. So that part was good. It was very strange though. I didn't stay with my friend I normally stay with because of all the restrictions she had in place personally. It was just going to be too difficult, make her uncomfortable. And then I stayed where I used to live in Burbank, California, primarily where I raised my sister. And they had the strictest restrictions in place. It was a $500 fine if you were not wearing your mask the moment you stepped outside your house. And LA is funny anyway for people who don't really know LA. I know you do, but LA really is just a whole bunch of different cities mushed together and called Los Angeles. And that's what it was when I was there. Every place I went, I felt like I had to ask what the rules were because they were different everywhere. Burbank, it was a $500 fine. In Santa Monica, it seemed like it was a fine, but then you would see people not wearing their mask properly and nobody would correct them. It was just really strange. And then in Orange County, especially at the beach, like Laguna Beach, I met a friend there who drove up from San Diego. They were pretty relaxed about it, especially in the restaurant. But if you went to the bathroom, you better have your mask on. I mean, every place it felt different. It was definitely less crowded, but there were still a lot of people in Santa Monica Pier. And the funny thing is, in an effort to curtail tourists on Santa Monica Pier, they cut off foot traffic, and all it did was make us closer together. It was like, okay, here's the law of unintended consequences right here. You have now made people closer together in your effort to try to get people away from the pier, which is clearly open. So it was strange. It was just really strange and a little sad. 3rd Street Promenade, which is right by the pier, which I know you know very well.
Yep.
One of my favorite places, because I used to take my sister there when she was little. 25%, 30% of the stores permanently closed.
Wow.
Store after store after store everywhere I went in Los Angeles, from Santa Monica to North Hollywood, boarded up because this was the weekend before the election, and they were afraid of riots, and that was really sad. It was very almost pre-apocalyptic, I guess, and. Wow. I got to see everyone I wanted to see, and I actually was going to try to take an earlier flight home because my flight left on Monday mid-afternoon, and there were no flights because so many flights, they have been canceled by the airlines because they can't fill the seats. So I couldn't even get on an earlier flight if I wanted to. So it was a little strange, a little sad.
Yeah, it is, right. We have a really close friend that lives in Long Beach, and I spent a lot of time there as well. And she works in construction, and they've been full board, right? And where she's on the safety side of things, having to have people wear their mask and things like that. And during the summer, it was like, it was a heat wave coming through, 100 degrees there, right? And you having to wear a mask working outside. I mean, it's like, and then in the restaurant itself, right? I know that there are masks that when you're cooking, right? I've had multiple chefs reach out to me, DMs and things like that, saying how brutal it is to have to wear a mask while you're cooking over a hot grill, and in steakhouses where I've worked at for years. I mean, you got 1,800 degree broilers, right? I mean, it's like it's super, super hot, with those type of things. That's so sad to hear about, the 3rd Street Promenade and all those things in Santa Monica, and then the unintentional consequences, right? Making people stand in line. Imagine what you're talking about, right? Because they're limiting how many people can go on the pier, right? And so it's it's crazy. I know that the Lobster, which is right there, Mickey and that whole crew, they're super cool. I used to work across the street from them, right? Diagonally across that, literally across the street from the pier.
Right.
And the curbside's not restricted, but they decided just to close down for the next 3 weeks because you can't have people in the restaurant, and they have no, and even outside dining is restricted. So it's tough. It's really
like killing restaurants slowly is what I think it's doing. And it really is. And I had to wear a mask at the cemetery. Outside at the cemetery, I had to wear a mask. And I thought that was silly. That's my opinion. Thought it was really, really silly. But I mean, I complied. It was just very strange.
It is very strange, right? And you obviously, you being in Alabama, right? You just, different, there from California. I chuckled on the inside when maybe I did out loud. I don't know, when you said you moved to California and you decided to become a vegetarian, right? It's like entrance fee, right? That you have to switch over your diet when you get there, right? And it was, I'll be honest, it was harder for me to be keto in California because the weather was so much warmer. I haven't lived in a warm weather climate other than when I was in California for those 9-10 months. Because I was in Colorado before that, been in Utah for the 14 years prior to that. I'm back in Utah now. I mean, it's, snow on the ground, and here. And so, doing, some cold work and going, I take cold showers, but like I went on a hike on Sunday. I was outside for over an hour, no shirt, shorts, right. And hiking. And that, my body craves fat when that happened. And so, but anyway, the diet piece of it is a really, really interesting thing in California, with that, because you're going to see things there that you don't normally see, but also people are, concerned about the mask, and it's a different, I'm not getting into politics, but you got difference between Republicans and Democrats and different, visions on what has to happen and what the difference is between those things. And, we don't wear a lot of masks here in Utah, but it's really interesting piece of the puzzle, because I think that we should, spend more time, boosting our economy. I mean, not economy, our immune system. Right. And then of course the economy too, because restaurants are decimated. I haven't worked in a restaurant. This is the longest I haven't worked in a restaurant since I was 21 years old. Right.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I didn't know that, Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
My favorite yoga studio is closed. One of my favorite restaurants in Burbank is closed. I mean, just kind of all these normal pit stops that I would do during my trip closed. My favorite place to go wine tasting, it's still in business, but the whole wine tasting part of it, they had wine tasting 6 days a week and beer tasting on the weekends. That part of it is totally closed. Yeah, it was just.
Yep. The sommelier that I worked with, and I had him on the show here, Francisco Ferrario. He actually worked at the Lobster for 16 or 17 years as their sommelier. And he did some training for people on Zoom and things like that. So I had to transition, and you got to figure out how to make a buck, right? This is, this is my pivot. I bought modernlongevitarian.com, excuse me, when I was losing the 40 pounds at age 40. So almost 9 years ago. So I've owned this and just never built a website for it, never did anything with it. And now here I am, right? This is my pivot, right, for this, right? And
I didn't know that. I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So because what happened is that when I was losing the weight, people were so focused on my diet, and because I think I was a pescatarian, vegetarian at the time, and I was 40 pounds overweight. And then I started working out. I started doing P90X again, and I did P90X when I was 35, and I lost the weight. Then I gained it back. And
I love P90X. I did that before my 20-year high school reunion.
Yeah. Yeah. We're a big fan of it. We even, we know a lot of the lines, right? Like the jokes, Tony Horton's jokes and things like that. Right. He's such a kook, and I follow him on Instagram now to these days. And sometimes we'll pull it out and we'll do it, and my son loves it. He's 18 and cause it's like got some classic bodybuilding type moves in there and things like that, where I do more compound movements and stuff now. Like I do kettlebell swings. That's not even in there, that type of stuff. But anyway, I started losing weight and I started doing P90X again. And, I lost 10 pounds in like that first month, but I was killing myself. I was commuting, 45 minutes each way to Salt Lake, riding on the bus. I was having to, get to the bus stop in the morning. I have a 1967 Jeep, and that was my main transportation at the time, and it was broken down. And so I was just like, I had a mile and a half to get to the actual bus stop both ways. Plus I had to walk a mile once I was in Salt Lake, and I was working 10 hours a day. So it was just brutal, and I couldn't keep up that pace with adding in 9 hours worth of workouts in a week. I just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And being 40 pounds overweight, and was talking to Matt Shannon, who happened to be a marketer for the doctors who did all the gastric bypass surgeries. And he said, Dr. Belknap had said in a talk that weight loss is about 70% diet. And I'm like, wait a minute. I put these two together instantly. I was like, wait a minute, I'm 40 pounds overweight, and I'm working on only the 30% of it. I didn't change it. And somebody had gifted me this book called The Warrior Diet, and which basically mimics this Roman Greco warriors theoretical eating time, when they ate, where they would get up in the morning, they would pack up their camp, they wouldn't have anything, right? They would put these weights on their gear and their stuff on their back. They would walk to where the fight was. They would have the fight. Then they would set up the camp, and then they would make dinner. So they had this one meal a day, one big meal a day, which was dinner. I'm like, okay. So they turned into like this 20, which we now call one meal a day, right? This 20-hour underfeeding where you could have nuts or, a little snack here and there. I would have a banana, 100 calories, 25 grams of carbs, right? Would be what I would have during the day. And then I lost 7 pounds the first week I did that. So it took me a month. Took a month to lose 10 pounds and then I lost 7 pounds in a week. And I was like, okay. So then so intermittent fast. And so keto came 4 and a half years later, right? the keto is an optimization thing for me. It wasn't a weight loss thing for me. And so that was an easy transition, and they work really good together, because when you're in ketosis, it's easier to fast, right? Because your body just naturally just goes, oh, I'm just going to burn this fat. I'm already burning fat. I'll just burn more. Right. So that type of stuff. But back to, California and those things, it's really odd where we are with the whole thing shutting down, shutting back down, opening back up,
can I drop something in here? I just want to throw in here, and again, we won't get into politics, but between my nonprofit and my for-profit, I spend all my time around doctors, right? I don't know a single doctor that thinks it makes sense to completely shut everything down and just stay indoors. Like, I don't know a single one. And I know doctors across multiple specialties. Yes, mainly oncology, but I know doctors, in hepatology, which is the study of the liver. I know doctors, who are surgeons. I know doctors, like primary care physicians, of course. I don't know a single doctor that thinks that makes sense and that it's going to actually work, so it's really frustrating when I hear that from people I really trust, and yet we're told to just, stay inside, stay inside. Yeah. That's the best thing. Stay inside.
Yeah. And it's really wild. Like, when you go to the grocery store, right, and you're supposed to stay 6 feet away, right, from somebody, right, and you're watching, somebody like, oh, they're reading the label, right? They're reading the label, right? And then they're like, and you're trying to like, hey, I know what I want, because I read that label 6 years ago. I know what, and you can't get in there to grab it. You have to like wait, and then they put it back, and then they don't even realize that you're like, so it's like created these things. I mean, I'm glad they went away from like these one-way lanes and all that stuff. I never paid attention to that. I'm just like, yeah, I know the store. This is the way that I'm going to go through the store and get things, and I know where this is. And, it's really, the worst part about this though, is that the impact it's going to have on our kids,
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Especially young kids.
Yeah. The young kids, because they're getting programmed for that. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And they're being forced to wear a mask when they go on an airline, a flight,
and be afraid.
Yep.
Yeah.
That they might get something, right? Because the first 6 years of our lives, where our brains that are in theta, we are recording things. We're like in this hypnotic state, and we just replay those things over and over and over. So now it's like, do you have your mask on? Do you have your mask with you? I think the questions that our parents are asking, do you have your mask? Right? You got to put your mask on, those type of things, right? Because you can't keep kids just in, locked up, and whereas humans as earthlings, right, are designed to connect with things like nature and other people and
other people. Yeah. Other people. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And like, I'm very concerned about that aspect. And then of course the school. Kids not being in school, either at all or on Zoom. And it's, I am relieved selfishly that I'm no longer a teacher. But if I were, and I got into a huge argument with someone I know really well actually about this, but if I were still a teacher, I would be teaching in the classroom. I would be there. And because that's your job. And that's what you signed up for. And so I'm just really frustrated by the schools being shut down.
Yep. What do you think about vaccination?
What do you mean? The how soon it's going to happen, or
should they make it mandatory? Not make it mandatory? Is it optional? Right? I mean, is it going to? I mean, or even is it going to work? Right? Because they're saying now it's like 70%, but yet like your immune system is like 99.5%. Likely you'll survive the whole thing, right?
I think the vaccinations should be given to the people who are highest at risk first, and we know who that population is. And otherwise, I mean, I think it should be treated like the flu vaccine, which I think most people who have insurance, most people get the flu vaccine, maybe not all, but most. And then certainly children under the age of 5, I think most people do whatever the pediatrician recommends, or at least that's my experience with parents with young children. But it really needs to be given to the people most at risk. And those are the people who are over, I think, what is it, 60, 65. And of course, anyone with comorbidities, which is just a really fancy euphemism for, you know, you have a lot of health issues. And yeah, if you have a lot of other health issues, you are definitely at higher risk. And, you know, I know for me, I am not one of those people, which is why I was not concerned about going to LA and getting on an airplane again. And I really wasn't. You know, I'm not concerned. Yes, we have to wear a mask here in Birmingham when we go into certain stores, pretty much anywhere. But when I go outside to walk my dog, I don't wear a mask.
Yeah.
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 I don't.
It amazes me. I mean, you know, we're here in Park City. I live at 7,000 feet. I hike up to like sometimes 8,000, 9,000, sometimes 10,000 feet.
Wow.
Right. And you see people on a trail, right? And they stop and they put their mask on, right? So you can walk past them on a trail, right? So you can pass each other, right? And I'm just like, what is that about? And I don't even have a mask with me. I'm just like, you know, I'm just going to, you know, and I've even like this person I passed on Sunday, they actually like looked away. So I'd have to like pass their back right that way versus it, you know, it was really kind of it's really an odd thing that's happened. And I do a fair amount of hiking. And so it's really, really an interesting thing. You know, one of the things I wanted to get back to, you know, is, and we're only got a couple minutes left, right?
I know.
Yeah. And I end up going over anyway. So, you know, it's really the thing about the subtitle of the book is A Life in 147 Days.
Yeah.
Right. And the switch that Adrienne made, right? Because she was suicidal right before that happened. And then she switched and then some amazing things happened. So maybe if you could talk about that just for a couple minutes and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, Adrienne was really depressed. I mean, she had been getting better, but she was suicidal in middle school, and it's in the book. But I mean, I missed it as a parent. I missed it, and I found it sort of by accident. And after cleaning her room and then confronting her, and so by the time she was diagnosed with cancer, she had been in therapy for 1.5 years, and so she was starting to get better. But she definitely leaned toward depression. And it was really scary. I mean, she had it planned, the date and everything. It was really, really terrifying. But when she was diagnosed with cancer, she seemed to just make a bucket list. It was like she knew she wasn't going to survive, and she made this bucket list. She didn't call it that, but that's what it clearly was. And there were the things that she wanted to do before she died, and they were things that were sort of as small as go to ballet, and we sat in the orchestra, you know, we had great seats, and or go to this restaurant we'd never been to and learn how to eat crab legs properly because we both love seafood, to as big as meeting her favorite musician, Dave Navarro of Jane's Addiction. And she managed to meet him twice. You know, so it was really incredible. And she was able to do almost every single thing on her bucket list except go on the Montel Williams show. And if you don't know who that is, Google him. He's really awesome. And that was just because the producers called too late, and we lived in LA, and the Montel Williams show was one of the very few talk shows that was filmed in New York at the time. And I just didn't feel like she was well enough to travel, but they did finally call. So in some ways, she did make that happen too.
It's an amazing story. And I want to commend you for having the guts to share this story over and over and over. I mean, I've listened to other podcasts you've been on. You've been on with my show twice, right? And the message it's important to me, right? And I know it's important to other people. And so I know you gave your email out again. If you are earlier, if you want to give your email out again, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
AJ, my book is on paperback. You can get it anywhere. So I'll start with that. So if you want to get a copy of my book, just go to betteroffbald, BALD, betteroffbald.com. All the retailers are there. If you don't like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the others. But if you go to my website, if you go to the betteroffbald.com, you'll also see an offer for a free copy of the ebook. So go there. And to email me personally, or if you want a free membership to Cancer University, just email me at Andrea@cancer.university. So Andrea@cancer.university. So we'll put those two out there.
That's amazing. again, thank you so much for coming on the show. I enjoy conversation. We went all over the map today, right?
We did.
Yeah. I did want to say that I'm getting some heat from some listeners and some friends for me to actually put out a cookbook. So,
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, you should. I mean, you certainly have the experience.
I do, right? With all the recipe writing, and my wife's an amazing cook, and those type of things. And so it's a funny thing, because I said, what am I going to title this? The ketogenic, intermittent fasting, ketogenic, sometimes one meal a day, longevitarian cookbook, right? I mean, it's like, what would it be? And our friend of ours was like, no, you need to just, and actually I think the working title is, Win with Flavor, right?
I was just going to say, the trick about titles.
Yeah.
The title, like Win with Flavor, which I love, it should appeal to someone's heart. So like Better Off Bald, Win with Flavor. The subtitle should appeal to someone's head. So the subtitle needs to tell people or give a hint as to what the book's actually about. So Win with Flavor is an awesome title. And then the subtitle can be all that other stuff you just said.
Right. Well, I'm playing around with like a modern longevitarian kitchen, or modern, or something along eating like a longevitarian, right? And because, when you look at the blue zones, 90% of their diet is plant-based. Right. All 5 of those are on average, and some are 100% plant-based, like the Seventh-day Adventists in Loma Linda, California. They're vegetarians.
I think it's weird that there's one in Southern California. Like I looked into that after we spoke. I thought, wow, that's really strange. That's so weird. Yeah,
it is, right? And I think the one that, my wife eats more Mediterranean, which is like the Sardinia, Italy, style. They still make pasta, and they still have those type of things, and wine. There's a Blue Zone wine as well that comes from that part that my friend Francesco helps Dan Buettner with. And
sign me up for that one.
Yeah, yeah. If you can get wine shipped, you just search Blue Zone wines, and it's an old world wine, so it's designed.
Can't get wine shipped to Alabama. It's
well, Utah, same way, right?
Yeah.
It's a tough thing, but my point being is, you mentioned about not being a foodie, and I was like, well, maybe I could help, at Win with Flavor, right? Yeah, and I
find if someone else cooks it, like I just don't like to.
Yeah. It's funny. I came up with some really creative, like turkey leftovers this year. I made some cool tacos. It was like,
that's wild. That's really cool.
Yeah, I took the taco meat and sweet potatoes, and I mixed them together, and with some and wilted some fresh spinach in them, right? And then then you change the seasoning, right? You put different seasoning in, and you're just going to taste, like that with some avocado. It was really good.
That sounds good. See, I would try. I would try that. I have no problem trying food that people make for me, but I personally, I just don't want to do it. So
I got it. Yeah, well, it's fun for me. It's an art for me, right?
Yeah.
And doing that. So I think AJ is going to buy your book, and he looks like he's going to buy my new cookbook. So
I know, I like it. And AJ, that was my nickname in high school, by the way, because my middle name is Jean. So.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. It's been super amazing. We've over an hour, which I don't really care about, but, so go to, I'm telling you, buy, her book, Better Off Bald, and go to betteroffbald.com. Super amazing, multiple award winning. And the lessons in this are, and we didn't even get into what to happen when it hits the fan specifically, because we went in deep in that on the podcast, which is getting practical.
Yeah.
Right. And when something goes on in your life, about getting practical. So it's, thanks for tuning in to the Modern Longevitarian. It's my Friday, and I'm going to play this outro here, and then we can chat for a second after the show if you like.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Cheers.